Red. The microphone is on when it's red.
Good afternoon. Am I able to be heard on the, is it Zoom?
Yep.
Thumbs up?
I
All right.
I can
great.
hear you, Wilson.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, let's call the meeting to order. And I want to thank the Palm Beach TPA for hosting today's meeting. Even though most of us are on a virtual world, but I want to again give my thanks, and hopefully this will be the first of many times, and maybe next time we'll get more action items on the agenda to get a physical quorum over here. With that said, can we do a roll call of the members, whether here in person or on Zoom, virtual?
There you go. Yep. Once it's red.
Red.
Turn it on again. Turn it on again. Make sure the mic is.
Testing, there we go, yep, okay. Palm Beach TPA,
Andrew Euler, present.
Broward NPO,
Paul Cavarese, Broward NPO, present online.
Miami-Dade TPO,
Wilson Fernandez, Miami-Dade TPO, present.
Florida Department of Transportation, District 4. I thought I saw Lewis out there online.
Yeah, Lois is there.
Okay, awesome. FDOT District 6, SFRTA,
Yay, virtual.
thank you. Palm Tran,
Good afternoon. This is Yash Nagle from Palm Trend.
Broward County Transit,
Anna Bielawska with BCT, present virtually.
Miami-Dade DTPW, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council,
Tom Lanahan for Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council.
SFRPC,
Christina Meskis for the South Florida Regional Planning Council online.
all right, we have quorum.
Thank you, Francesca. Is there anything that we would want to add to the agenda that is not the agenda by any of the members? No? Okay, let's continue. I think we have somebody coming in from FDOT District 6.
Yes, for the minutes, I'll announce that Shirin Yi Fong is joining us from FDOT District 6.
Good afternoon, Shireen. Hello. Okay, with that said, we had the approval of the minutes. Since we don't have present, we'll put this for the next meeting, but thank you for those that did provide some comments to the minutes, and we have taken care of those comments, and we'll approve these minutes at our next meeting. So public comments. Want to open up the reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. Seeing none. Public comment period closes, and let's move on to information items.
Comments from the chair.
Oh, comments from the chair. Well. Yes. So. In celebration of Women's History Month, little factoid here, we are acknowledging the contributions of Judy Heumann. Ms. Heumann contracted polio back in 1949 and began to use a wheelchair for her mobility. Later in life, Judy was denied her teaching license after failing her medical exam due to her mobility limitations. Judy sued the Board of Education and went on to become the first wheelchair user to be a teacher in the state of New York. She has been instrumental in the development and implementation of legislation such as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Americans with Disability Act, and the Rehabilitation Act, and the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which have been advancing the inclusion of disabled persons in the US and around the world and fighting to end discrimination against those with disabilities. So that is our factoid. Thank you, Francesca, for having that. So now moving to information items, we have Jessica Jocelyn here from Kittleson that has a presentation for us. Welcome, Jessica.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So yes, as the chair said, I'm presenting an update on the 2050 RTP. So just as a refresher, this is only the second presentation on this project that just started in January. So if you go to the next slide, we always like to, oh, is this clicker active? Okay, thank you, sorry. We always like to open the RTP discussion as a reminder of the board we serve and their mission and vision. So here again, we know our slogan is 3 counties, 1 traveling public, and we are all working together to create a seamless, multimodal, and safe and accessible system for our region. Thank you.
Jessica, I just want to acknowledge DTPW, Mr. Javier Heredia is here. Ms. Javier, you can set up just to have that noted on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. So here we also like to remind ourselves with the regional transportation plan, we are really stepping up as we do every cycle with what we're challenging ourselves to do as working as one group versus working independently and individually. So here you can see all the words bolded, emerging technologies, resilient infrastructure, transit supportive land uses, options, and so forth. So we just always like to remind ourselves of what we're trying to achieve through this regional transportation plan. I also, for those that maybe weren't at the last meeting, wanted to highlight the action items from the last meeting. For those that are maybe newer to the Rttac group, these are truly productive working meetings. We get a lot done during them. It's exciting to see such movement when we all get together. So at the first meeting, I have received all the scopes of work for each of the individual LRTPs that you're working on. I've received your schedules, I've received the points of contact, and then we've also been updating the Rttac website. So thank you for everyone's coordination and collaboration on those items at the last meeting and up until this meeting. So for our agenda today, this is a snapshot of all 10 tasks that the consultant team is scoped to conduct, but we will just be talking about those that are bolded, the 7 there sticking out. And through these 7 tasks, I do want to highlight it's either just for your information on the task. There is going to be open discussion on some of the tasks, and then some of the tasks, there'll be specific requests that we have as a consultant team. So first, actually, I'm starting with the last task, task 10, and that's Rttac support. So we wanted to report back, and in case anyone missed from this technical advisory group, what Rttac, our council, said at their last February 23rd meeting when our project manager, Francesca Taylor, reported on the regional transportation plan. And really the 2 things that stuck out to us. The first was our council's desire that we explore and look at a regionally prioritized project list. For the detailed people in the room, you want to know, well, what is that and how are we going to do it? We don't know. We didn't get into that detail. It was just kind of generally stated that we need to, as a region, be thinking about what our priorities are, which I think all of us can acknowledge that's what this plan is seeking to do and has been seeking to do over time. So not much discussion on that yet for this meeting, but the second bullet, I am curious to get folks' feedback from the Rttac. They had mentioned a desire, specifically the chair of the council, had mentioned a desire to conduct performance reporting. And I wanted to bring that to the group for those that have been on Rttac for a while, we have done performance reporting in the past. But wanted to broach this subject and just kind of warm up ideas for how we could look at assessing how we've been doing. And I have some bullets here. We could look at funding. So how much funding have we secured for the region, discretionary funding? How many projects have we implemented? Look at just strictly the system performance. How is the system performing over time from a multimodal perspective? And really any other ideas that come to mind. I'm not looking, as I present this question to you all, there's no expectation that we solve this or answer it in detail right now, but just again, wanted to get the ideas flowing since that did come up from Rttac, so we can just warm up. So Chair, maybe I'll start with you on this.
So Jessica, just as kind of understand how you would like this presentation to go, are you wanting to get feedback on this at this moment, or do you want to wait until you complete your presentation to kind of get that feedback? Your call here.
I think because there's 7 different tasks and topics, it might be good to stop per task, but I do understand that I'm diving right in. So if folks want to come back to this as well, on this particular one, totally open to that as well.
Does anybody want to take Jessica up on her offer?
I mean, we can discuss this is Andrew, Palm Beach CPA. Jess, did we have performance reporting in the 2045 or did we have it in prior RTPs?
We, for the performance reporting, so we did performance measurement work in the regional plan last cycle in terms of based on the list of projects and testing different scenarios, how would the system perform? But the kind of doing a historical trend snapshot on how we're performing, that has been quite some time. Wilson, you might remember the exact year, but we had like a brochure and it was called an annual performance report. And it looked at how we've been doing versus a typical LRTP assessing measures, looking at a future scenario. So the last RTP did future assessment, not just as a region, how have we been performing?
Anybody? In the Zoom world, want to chime in on this?
Hi, Paul Cavarese from the Zoom world. And just letting you know, I would be there in person, but my son is homesick. So I appreciate the being able to multitask. So Jessica, looking at these, so I'm going to go in reverse order. Performance reporting. So each MPOs, we're required to do performance measures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the benefits of the Rttac and Rttac is, and we kind of started doing this last year and it led to a committee, is that maybe we can start unifying, or maybe this is something that doesn't happen at Rttac and staff from the 3 MPOs get together and compare notes and see if there's any commonality on how we're reporting our performance measures. Aggregate that together and see if that tells any kind of story. And that's a suggestion for the chair to mull over. Going back to the regionally prioritized project list, I kind of feel like I'm going to do my best Wilson impression here, but it feels like we came full circle because I remember Jessica and I having a conversation last year about having a prioritized project list was a unnecessary use of time and consultant resources, i.e. funding. Because at the end of the day, the Rttac does not fund any projects. It's down to the individual MPOs to fund projects. So when we're looking at regionally prioritized project list, why would we, as a committee, start prioritizing projects for MPOs that we don't control the funding for? So I'm asking that rhetorically, and then just being more blunt, if we were going to look at regional projects, so projects, if we want to define them as projects that cross MPO borders, well, FDOT already does that through their SIS. So it kind of seems like a redundant at best, it's a redundant exercise. At worst, it's feckless. Thank you,
Yes.
Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Any other? Oh,
in person, in
Francesca.
the in-person world, Francesca Taylor for the purpose of the minutes. So, you know, just speaking, I guess chiming in as the RTP project lead, I think that Paul, I agree, you make a valid point that we all do our own individual performance measure tracking for our MPOs. And I think that the request from Rttac was a little bit above and beyond that. You know, we have the federal requirements that we have, but my understanding is what the Rttac chair being Fur was referring to was what has been moved from the 2040 to the 2045 to the 2050. That was my understanding of his request. And so I think that's a little bit different than the federal performance measure tracking that we do. And then, you know, on the regional prioritized list, you know, great. Thank you for the background. I think that it's great to know that this conversation has been had in some way. I think that it was also in reference to the action that was taken at Rttac, where the board agreed to support projects that are in the 2050 and prioritize as regional. And so although it might be an exercise that already exists in CIS plan, if we are, you know, trying to arm ourselves for discretionary grants or, you know, things that might come down the pipeline, do we want to also reflect those priorities in our RTP, hoping that at best it would be redundant, and maybe redundant isn't a bad thing. So my 2 cents.
Any other comments? I'll throw my 2 cents worth in here, and it goes to the matrix of assessing. One area that perhaps we can explore and go back is how successful have we been? And this goes out to the DOT side as to the trip list and advancing those projects that we approve and seeing how successful we have been to carry out those problems, given that these requests are within a 5-year window. So I think we have data available that we can go back and start assessing how successful have we been to delivering the trip projects that we've identified, and maybe in 5-year intervals that we kind of see how successful we are. What you're probably going to see is there are projects that kind of come in and out of those 5 years, and kind of figure out how to best represent what success and failure mean. And because there is going to be change, but perhaps to have an understanding as to how successful we have been to advance and implement those projects. Because if they're within the 5-year window, they're probably already implemented.
Yeah.
If we go back. So that was my 2 cents worth of this slide.
Excellent.
So with that, let's move.
You got it.
Oh,
Lois
okay.
Bush also online has a hand up.
Shireen,
Oh, red is on. Okay, regarding the CIS, I think it's not a duplication of efforts to have a list, because we need to get the regional projects into the CIS long range cost feasible to move it in. Just need to have that one agency taking the lead. So I don't see it as a futile or duplicative effort to have a list of regional projects. Because we're decentralized. So District 6 is looking at District 6, District 4 is looking at District 4. There are a few projects we do have that cross District 4 and 6, but we're depending on this type of organization to put forward these regional projects.
Great.
all right, Lois. Did you have a comment, Lois? Okay. Jessica, please move forward.
Okay, so for the schedule, I just wanted to, before diving into the details of a schedule review, again, show you the snapshot at a high level. So we're in the red box areas where I kind of keep our focus the next 3 or 4 months. As you can see, quite a few tests are in process right now. So we are busy on our side. I just want to kind of show that from a visual standpoint. But jumping into the details, having received everyone's schedule, and I hope you're able to read this, but there were just a few things I wanted to highlight as we do a deep dive into comparing the 3 of the LRTP schedules in comparison to each other, and then how it falls into the regional plan, and just wanted to highlight a few things. So first, on public engagement, we had, and this will probably come up in a few slides, but we had a extremely productive public participation subcommittee meeting led by Elizabeth Rockwell this morning, and the public participation subcommittee members representing each MPO and DOT district. So that productive meeting was this morning. It was kind of a kickoff. So this box is somewhat already checked off as done, even as of this morning, on syncing up our meeting and survey timing. So just wanted to highlight that, that is going on. Moving along to the goals and objectives, that's always a near-term activity because it really guides our entire process and decision-making process. Wilson, don't knock me with the gavel. I see you with the gavel over there. So for goals and objectives, 2 of the 3 MPOs, based on the schedules I received, are nearing completion. And then the 3rd MPO of the group is ending towards May. So we are hoping to bring that to Rttac in the summer. So the sooner we can get them, the better. I know everyone's moving as fast as possible, but it will be important that we see each of the individual MPO's 2050 goals as we roll them up to look at a 2050 perspective. And I'll dive more into that activity later, but just wanted to highlight that from a schedule. It's a bit inconsistent, and we want to try to get that wrapped up sooner rather than later. On the financial resources side, when we looked at the schedule, I want to recommend, and maybe this is to you, Andrew Euler specifically, for the first working group meeting to look at commencing in an April-May timeframe to start developing what the group wants to achieve by talking on this kind of subset group on finances, and look at the timing. I will be very transparent. Financial resources on historical RTP plans tends to somehow get to the back burner, and then it's a scramble mode trying to get together and make sure we're all on the same page. And I think it's just the essence of long range planning. There are a lot of different moving pieces. And that one's like, yeah, it'll come at the end, but we want to get that done sooner rather than later. So just wanted to flag that. And we're happy to work with you, Andrew, on getting that set up and all of that. For the needs assessment, I wanted to highlight, right now I have kind of bands of time for the needs assessments from each of your LRTP schedules, and we need to get very specific on dates from a modeling standpoint. So what the regional plan does is creates a baseline model network that you all develop your needs from. So we need to get that baseline out to you all. So I will be following up on details for that needs assessment if I can't figure it out in the products I have currently on the scheduling. And then we'll also, of course, work through Tawari and the modeling subcommittee to make sure that's very clear. But I see that coming soon as well. And just wanted to highlight that up front. And also we conduct a regional consistency review when you have your needs assessments prepared. So again, these are just details I wanted to highlight I'm going to need from your schedules once you have them. And then last on schedule, I wanted to highlight on the scenario planning, and we mentioned this last meeting, but 2 of the 3 MPOs are conducting independent scenario planning separate from the regional planning. But 1 of the 3 is depending on our regional scenario work. So I wanted to just alert from a schedule standpoint, we've kicked off scenario development already on the regional side with the consultant team, and more to come on that in future slides. But that was my summary on schedule and coordination. You can see just the advance notice there. I will be reaching out for those details, but no action item right now or discussion, Chair, unless folks have questions.
All right. Does anybody have a question on this topic for Jessica? No. Jessica, I have a couple
yeah.
questions, if you can go back. Couple
Sure.
things. In this RTP update cycle, are we having a review of the regional network designation again, or because we typically have that every 5 years,
Yes.
given that the SIS plan comes out and seeing, updating that map, but I didn't see anywhere that that is going to be coming up. Typically, that's something that comes to the Rttac and eventually gets endorsed and formally adopted by Rttac.
Yes. Thank you. And I probably wasn't clear. These boxes were me highlighting where I saw potential hiccups when I looked at the 3 LRTP schedules. The network is actually further in the presentation and will be an interactive discussion for today. It has started that activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right,
this was
then I'll
just to
wait.
highlight inconsistencies or potential gaps in the scheduling.
So my other question on this is, what do you see in the next coming? We'll talk about the Rttac meeting schedule coming up, but what is there for the summer, things that you want to take through the Rttac and potentially even going to Rttac through the summer?
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. So we'll be bringing the network and the goals is the plan for the summer, if we can sync everyone up. I know some MPOs are playing catch up
Okay,
to other MPOs, but that's the ideal is this summer
Network.
we'd have goals and network adopted. from
thank you.
Rttac. Thank you.
No, any other questions? All right.
All right, great. Moving right along, just wanted to highlight again, I already shared that the Public Participation Subcommittee met this morning. This is just a sampling reminder of some of the work prepared by this group and this task from the 2045. So we will be working as a unit with that subcommittee on refreshing and updating a little informational video, social media, the website, and again, highlighting that what has worked really well and we're going to continue to do is just full integration and frequent communication with your LRTP public engagement teams, so that regional planning is just part of all the planning we're doing. And then here I just wanted to highlight, so these are the looks of the last 3 plans we've adopted over the past long time. And just wanted to highlight here, we're working on the new look of the 2050 plan. So stay tuned. We will be rolling that out after working with the Public Participation Subcommittee on that. But we're looking to get that new look out there sooner rather than later. Now moving along to the goals task. So here I wanted to highlight that this activity has started, as I've already mentioned. We are going to be looking at the 2045 RTP goals as a start, but also looking, the scope was very well written. I know the Rttac worked hard on the scope, so we're making sure all the topics that were rolled into the scope are going to be reviewed and screened from the 2045 and updated to bring us to 2050. But ultimately, our goal is to ensure that they're comprehensive, progressive, and equitable, as again, these really guide our decision-making process. So here I wanted to walk through the approach that we're going to be doing. And there is an interactive session on this task itself. So, and the first is on the transportation policy and plan review task. So we will be submitting to Francesca and her team a list of documents and plans and policies that we are to review as part of this activity. And I wanted to take a moment, because as the managing MPO, it does have in the scope that they will be able to kind of bless that list. But I wanted to open it up to the full group on any plans that you want to share now to make sure that they're included. I do have the list from the scope in front of me. It's quite long. I don't know if we want to read it out. But I just wanted, if there's anyone in the audience now on Rttac that's like, since the scope was written, make sure XYZ plan, like if a ped bike master plan was just adopted, or a Vision Zero, or a freight plan, something kind of fresh that the MPOs or DOTs have recently adopted. But kind of your general stuff, we don't have to go through the full list. We have that, but just kind of those unique things that that we won't, because it's freshly adopted. And if
I don't know if others have anything, but perhaps Javier can speak to Miami-Dade County is doing a transportation master plan, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Well, so right now there's the master plan has kicked off. It's in its early stages. We can bring back some more information next time around.
This was pretty recent, and I'm not sure whether it got placed into the original scope of services. I don't think it's,
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think so.
it's kind of come about since
Okay.
preparation of the scope. So I think that's what you were looking for, right, Jessica?
Yes, exactly. If there's anything, and we do have a team of people that work throughout the region. So I don't anticipate anything falling through the cracks, but I would have been upset at myself if I didn't at least ask while we have everyone, in the room.
So just, you may know that the DOT, it's not finished yet, but we're working on our resilience action plan. I didn't see resilience in one of the elements there, but we're working on that, and that's due in June. So that'll be done soon, and after that comes the resilience implementation plan. Just things to have on your radar.
Okay.
Thank you, Shireen. Andrew?
Sure, yeah, this is just more of a clarifying question. So in this section, is it more of a focus though on those larger documents, so that the new SIS policy plan, the IIJA, sort of those, right? Is that sort of what the main focus is?
Yeah, I'd say county and higher level plans, so county to federal, that you think we need to keep in mind. I don't know if we want to get to the city or municipality level. But so the examples being shared is exactly what we're looking for.
All right, continue,
right.
please.
I will keep moving along. So thank you for that feedback. And then getting to the topic that Wilson, sorry, I'm having clicker. So this is the transportation network task that we wanted to talk about, task 6. So as a reminder, here's a snapshot of the 2045 network that this group developed. Another reminder, trip funding, as Wilson, you were talking about, it has to be on this network in order to get trip funding. So it is a hot topic. If you go to the next slide, go back one. I wanted to remind you, when I polled you last meeting, what's most important to you? 38% picked the network. So this was by far your most important topic, which I'm not surprised, it's attached to the funding to get projects done. So just wanted to remind you that this is an important task to you. And then I now want to walk through what it was and pause for discussion on this. And I am going to give Shireen and Lois a heads up that the topic might come to you on this for any changes in SIS designations or policy changes, just to get your brain warmed up. But I'll first walk through the last network criteria, and then we can open it up for discussion. So as a reminder, there were 5 criteria that made up the regional network in the 2045 plan. The first covered your principal arterials. The second criterion was planned physical extensions of a principal arterial. So something you've programmed and funded that just hasn't been built yet. It's a principal arterial, needs to be on the network. Your third criterion is your SIS network, all things SIS, your hubs, your emerging at the time, your corridors, it was all part of the network. Also included rail. Your fourth criterion was principal arterial connections. So this is, I like to describe if there were any gaps in the network, like you're traveling along the road, you're on the regional network and you just hit a dead end. Those types of scenarios, we would complete the link and connect it to the next regionally significant roadway, just so there were no gaps. And then the fifth that was newly added, I believe in 2045, was active rail lines, because not all rail lines were part of the SIS. And we wanted to recognize that and add any active rail line onto the regionally significant corridors network. So I wanted to open it up for discussion. This is our third, I think, round getting here, and I feel like it gets refined and stronger and more objective. I think it started out as a very subjective network, probably 15 years ago. So I personally, my professional opinion, we're in a really good spot to look at these 5, update the files, make sure we have all the designations current, but I wanted to open it up for discussion. One thing that comes to mind is the off-SIS network eligibility for SIS funds. I don't know if that is a topic of interest for you guys, but I will pause there and see if maybe our chair wants to.
I always defer to Mr. Bill Cross on that topic. So I don't know if Paul covers, he wants to do his Bill Cross impression.
No, there's only one of those.
There's
So Jessica, you piqued my interest. You brought up what I wanted to bring up. So I guess through the chair, if you could elaborate on that.
On the off-SIS.
Yes, and I'm bringing that up because we are running out of, when we look at the regional network as is, Broward is exhausting eligible facilities for TRIP.
Okay. That's good feedback. My brain hadn't gone there yet. So that might be something we need to consider looking.
Paul, thank you for that comment. Because I think as this evolved, and that was the intent of revisiting this every 5 years or so, is to see what works, what's not working, where are we missing the boat and the mark on things. So one of the things that in taking a look at this now in 2023 versus when we looked at this before 2010 for the first time, and for those that have been here for a while, this was a major point of contention. Years in the making to get consensus on here. So now we're really in the refinement stage of this. But when I take a look at here, I see kind of the verbiage has this a sense of a highway plan. And we have been talking about being multimodal and embracing that and so forth. And perhaps that we can, in our perhaps readoption or kind of refinement of this, is to look at these as principal arterial corridors and not in the context of a roadway facility, and looking at them at corridors. And then perhaps the extension of that could be in a broader case. It doesn't have to be within the right of way in context of a roadway. And that could be a natural evolution, if you will, how far away from the corridor. That could be things that could be discussed and ironed out afterwards. But I think having these defined a little bit broader than just principal arterial corridors and maybe swaths on the map rather than lines on the map is perhaps a natural evolution of this. But I'm just throwing that out as a brainstorming idea at this point.
Mr. Chair, Tom Lanahan online has his hand up.
Tom?
Thank you. Do we need to mention in here, airports and ports and things like that, or is that picked up in the SIS network item?
That's picked up in the SIS item. Thank
Okay.
you for adding that in. I did not say that when I mentioned SIS.
And just to be clear, do we have waterways in the regional network? Because that wasn't mentioned here.
Yes, waterways is part of the SIS network. I'm trying to-
Now that you had the criteria, perhaps maybe the network,
Yeah, I don't know.
it's having
Am
a
I
problem.
using this? Oh. Oh, no, that's okay. I wanted to make sure I'm not, do you mind putting it back one? Because I do often use the clicker wrong. That's why I wanted to ask. Go back actually one, back one more. Another one,
Sure,
sorry.
yeah.
We're trying to get to the map. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
So the
but
CIS
map
is,
very hard.
yeah, the CIS is comprised of waterways, roadway corridors, emerging corridors, hubs. And so all the modes, and the hubs is some transit hubs that qualified, airports and seaports. And correct me if I'm wrong, FDOT representatives. And it's changed since this map. The designations have changed.
The CIS designations have not changed.
Well, like emerging corridors is no longer a
Some have been added,
term. Yeah,
some emerging, so
yeah.
it's simple. If you think you can meet the eligibility criteria
Right.
on a CIS facility, you can get funding. You just have to meet that criteria.
Right.
And if you think you're gonna meet that criteria in X amount of years, you might qualify to
Right,
be as
right.
an emergent CIS, as long as you're on the CIS network, yeah.
But it's very multimodal, the CIS network. I know, like, Wilson, you bring up a good point. It might even be kind of to the packaging and branding of how we say this network is. Like right now, it's coming across very roadway centric, but it's not. The regional network is very multimodal. And same with CIS, it's very multimodal. But I think for whatever reason, the branding in our mind, we're thinking roads. So maybe the consultant team, I can give feedback to the team leading this, that we need to make sure it's branding and packaging
Correct.
really take us multimodal, as I think the CIS is still very similar, but it's working on the branding and packaging of what we call things.
It's always a misconception that CIS is just for highways, but
Right.
it is not. Yeah.
Right? It's very multimodal.
So we'll, and I'm sorry for interrupting, Chair. He's muted, but I'm just going to assume he said
Oh,
okay.
Go ahead.
We've been told specifically that our trip projects must be roadway expansion and cannot be multimodal. So bike lanes and sidewalks are not eligible with District 4. So if there's a way to codify that to make it more consistent amongst the districts, we'd be in support of that. But
Right, I think I'm not sure if it's roadway capacity, but it is a capacity enhancement improvement. That's part of the trip. Yeah.
yeah, that is the way the program's written. Our district's interpretation has been roadway capacity.
Oh, interesting.
So may I speak?
Yes, Shereen.
If it is on a CIS facility and it is capacity on a CIS facility, you can add bike lanes like we did on Chrome Avenue, but it has to be part of that.
I think,
So trip funds and CIS funds are different.
right. And I think what he's mentioning is trip funding.
Trip, okay.
Yeah, trip specifically, which has been capacity. But that's something if the Rttac wants to have a discussion on trip and have the RTP team kind of consider that component in this, because they do talk to one another.
But I think what Paul is alluding to, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the interpretation
Right.
of that, right? So there is the program, but each district kind of administers that in their way and their interpretation of the program language. So I think that's what Paul is alluding to, and perhaps there could be a little bit of a discussion and using this forum.
Yep.
Perhaps because we have all the players here,
Yeah.
is to get a better sense as to the project eligibility, the types of projects, and whether they would be considered under the TRIP program moving forward. And I think there shouldn't be a case where within the region, there's different interpretations.
Right, right.
Correct. And I think one of the functions of this map is to optimize trip funding in our region, I'd like to know what the limitations are before we start editing or modifying this document.
Good feedback.
Well, thank you, Paul. And we'll discuss at the end of the meeting, kind of the next steps for the next meetings, and let's keep that in mind when we talk about upcoming meetings.
Okay.
Any other questions on the regional network?
Yeah, so Jess, I wanted to go back to the initial point where you were talking about off-SIS funding. I think there's a new program. We went to a training recently where I was hearing that project roadways or facilities that are off SIS network may still qualify for SIS funding.
Correct.
So can we get clarification on what the criteria is for those roadways, even if they're off the SIS network? And could that be included in our regional network?
That's what I wanted to bring up for discussion. There's very specific criteria for being eligible for potential off-SIS funds. It does need to show that it helps the capacity of the SIS facility. So it can't just be anywhere, and it's going into a pool because there's not limited money. So every request for funds is going into the same pool. So an off-SIS request is going to compete with an on-SIS request, to my understanding from the regional information sessions. I know Shireen was one of the leads at District 6 at that regional session. Maybe the Rttac wants a special presentation, or I don't know.
Yeah,
on the
you're
topic.
correct, Jess. There are requirements for funding for off-SIS facility. It is not the new program. So whatever, like she said, whatever projects you're proposing will compete with regular SIS projects. When I say SIS projects, not just highway, just
Right.
all SIS projects. There are criteria, and I could forward that to you. I'm looking at the brochure right now. There are criteria to meet that.
It's clear though, and it is a work in process. It's a new approach, and I would like to think the regional group here and your desire, because we're so urban, is really advancing the state and thinking of how we can use our funds differently. So I see this as actually a really awesome change.
So
at
would
our
it be
state
good,
level.
Shireen, then perhaps yourself or anybody from District 4 that would want to jump in to give us a presentation? Because I think what this is leading to is that the more we're informed in terms of policies out there, that we would be able to create synergy and to, be able to provide projects in a regional network, that would be part of the framework of the regional network update.
Because I think
That what I'm getting?
yeah,
And so that feedback needs to occur before the regional network gets solidified to the point where it gets
yes, I
adopted
think
and
it would be
refined.
good for the group to be knowledgeable of the change. But I do think it's really exciting. It's complementary. They all work together to help all of our system move.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it would be a worthwhile discussion, whether it needs to be at a full Rttac meeting or.
Well, we'll talk about that, how we,
Okay.
all right,
But it's
okay.
exciting.
Let's move on.
Yes.
On the presentation.
Okay, so for scenario planning, I just wanted to highlight again, we kicked off. So Renaissance Planning Group, Mr. Chris Sinclair, we got to lead this. He is like the godfather of scenario planning in my mind. I am very, very excited to work with him. He's very excited to work with you all. So I know later on we may be talking about having a scenario development specific meeting in the very near term. But as a reminder, the 2045 plan scenarios on the top there, grayed out. At the bottom are the 2050 scenarios, but we want to start this soon because it ties to so many things. It ties to modeling, it ties to the long range plans, it ties to the needs assessment. So I just wanted to highlight that this is coming, stay tuned. And for those that don't remember, Tawari, someone mentioned this last meeting, a reminder that we have an accessibility task as part of the regional network. And to say it succinctly, we have been challenged to assess rather than level of service accessibility as a region. So it's looking at an alternative measure to how we're connecting people to transportation. Franco Saraceno is going to be running that task, working with the modeling group and the scenario development team. So that'll be a really exciting measure that we can pull into the plan and share with you all at the MPO level. So moving along, didn't have any discussion needed on my end, Chair, for that one. So I wanted to highlight on the model support task, we are in the existing plus committed network development phase. That first bullet is directly from the regional transportation plan scope, that the local MPOs will be providing their socioeconomic data and committed project information to the consultant team for the existing plus committed or trend alternative. So what that means is the regional team will be sending a request for codable projects and the details. We will be sending a template. It'll be very straightforward and clear, fingers crossed, and we will give timelines, but that is needed soon because we need to have that network developed. And the network is going to be any projects completed since 2020 and any through projects funded for construction on phases between now and the outer year of your TIP. So again, don't worry about the details now. I just wanted to give you a heads up. This is ongoing and a request will be coming for those that have done this before with us. It's going to be the same thing that we've done in the past.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, Palm Beach CPA. I would just throw out there, if you can, make sure you have FDOT on that communication as well,
Okay.
because when it comes to some of those coding of the SIS projects, I feel like they have more information than we always have. So last time around, we had to go to them at the end anyway, just to get that information. So they're going to know more about what's in the SIS capacity and how to code that than we may.
Okay.
Lauren?
Yes, and Jess, I think as a part of this effort too, we're going to be needing the GIS shape files for the past couple TIPs, right? So we can develop that existing network.
Yes, and that's we're playing with. So in the past, and I know we've had some correspondence internally with the TPO team and the consultant team, we are looking at different options. So we're going to send a template to fill in the information that we can code, but there's also an opportunity if you have GIS files from your TIP, that's also another thing you can send us that we'll be sending in a summary. There was some nuances in the GIS shapefile approach that we caught in the last 48 hours.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing kind of a hybrid request of information that'll be clear to you guys, but we want to make it easy, clean, simple, and get it done quickly for you guys. But reach out to FDOT. I will make that note too. And maybe we'll think of like tri-rail term, we'll think outside the box of who we need to reach out to. All right. Chair, that is it. I know that was a lot, but I know this is kind of the main reason we're meeting, I think,
Yes.
today. So just a summary of the requests, schedule details, the goals, E+C project information, and then getting that financial working group, thinking about getting that set up and in the calendars. So I'll be
All right,
following.
thank
up
you,
on all those.
Jessica. And just to open up any last questions that we have for Jessica before we let her sit down. All right, thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, moving on, we have information item 7B, Palm Beach TPA Long Range Transportation Plan Update. And just wanted to let know that what I would like to do is, since we are doing a rotational Rttac meeting, that each time we're at somebody's location, we want to highlight that county, the activities going on in that county. And I think this goes to what Jessica was wanting to make sure that she has the pulse on what's going on in every corner of this region. And so today, given that we're here in Palm Beach County, I think it's the Palm Beach TPA turn to kind of tell us what's going on in beautiful Palm Beach County. So with that, Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate you all coming to see our facilities. I know it's the first time for a lot of you, so if you'd like to stay around for a tour afterwards, we'd love to give it to you. Also with us today is Nathan George. He's our Long Range Transportation Plan Coordinator. He might jump in on this presentation a little bit if we have any other specific questions, but he'll be doing a lot of outreach, not just for the LRTP, but he'll be doing coordination with the RTP as well. So we came up with a simple name for the 2050 plan. That's really just Vision 2050. And in this plan, what we're really going to be focusing on, I'll be going through in this presentation. A lot of the things coming with the new bipartisan infrastructure law, a little bit more of a focus on housing and coordination on that, and then really trying to set up towards our 561 corridors that were a part of our 2045 LRTP, and also the regional transportation plan for 2045. The first step we'll be doing is refining our goals and objectives, and then also those measures with a lot of focus on safety, trying to push even more safety in these measures and sort of how those are going to balance with the other measures and targets that we set. Our last time around for 2045, with the expansion of all those performance measures we're required to report on, and then all the other ones that we set locally, we have a pretty large list of measures that we are tracking. And we're trying to figure out this time around if that's really been the most effective path for us. We've realized a lot of those measures haven't really gained much traction, hasn't really influenced our decision making. So reassessing some of those ones that really aren't being that effective and either cutting them or replacing them. Another portion that we're going to ramp up more this time around is on the product identification front. We haven't really had a formal call for products in the past, and we did notice that Broward MPO has done in the past with success, and they're doing it this time around as well. So we're going to have a pretty in-depth call for projects when it comes to submittals from the locals, and then having a formalized process for how they submit that, how we're going to score those to our measures, and then how we're going to create cost estimates for those. But also an ideal approach for us for projects is always to have all modes, which has also been something that we've struggled to fully and comprehensively do in our previous LRTPs. So we're really trying to focus on all the modes we have and showing that full range of projects within the county, and then having a greater focus on a lot of these other sections that we haven't really had much of a focus on or been light in the past. So greater focus on intelligent transportation systems with TSM&O, micromobility, and not just transit, but local circulators that we see are becoming more prevalent, electric and alternative fuel infrastructure, freight, and then also emerging technologies. And then when it gets into the scenario planning, so based on a lot of those measures that we set forth early on, and a few other additional measures when it comes to what others want to get out of sort of the transportation system when it comes to land value or other types of non-transportation measures, we're going to try to incorporate into our scenario planning. But the focus of our scenario planning when it comes to our scope is going to be on those 561 corridors. And so those are our major corridors for transit, enhanced transit facilities within the county. And we're going to be doing a greater focus on the development potential around those nodes. So that's similar to what we did as a region last time around for 2045 in the RTP. This is going to be a little bit more specific when it comes to the types of land use policies that are already in place for these locations, and then what could change in the future for them. So we're working with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and they're helping us right now. Actually, we have all the nodes preliminarily along our corridors, so all those transit-oriented developments that could occur, and then they're doing analysis based on existing conditions out there, what the zoning and land use regulations are, and what it could be, and then there's also be a station typology for every single node, and whether or not the current land use regulations meet the recommended typology for that station. So it will be some local outreach on that as well. But the end result is really trying to get at a realistic assumption of potential capacity at those stations when it comes to housing, jobs, ad valorem revenue, and then also with housing, having assumptions on housing affordability. So affordable homes along the corridor. And then to supplement that work, there's also the regional runs that we're looking to get the results from. So I know we're doing ACEs technology out there, other emerging technologies and disruptors. So looking forward to those scenarios to integrate into our plan as well. Here's just what those lines look like on a map. It's the 561 corridors. It's our major arterials throughout the Palm Beach County. We just completed a State Road 7 and Okeechobee Boulevard study, which assessed different alternatives for transit into the future. Right now, the one we have moving forward for FDOT to see if it's feasible in the next few years here is a dedicated light rail service along Okeechobee. We're right now also assessing all the other corridors. We've done US 1 for the entire stretch of Palm Beach County in the past, but we'll be assessing all the other corridors from a higher level perspective about potential types of enhanced transit service, and then a little bit more of that land development scenario around those corridors. And here's a little more of those results of Okeechobee Boulevard. So this study just finished up this past year. And what you see in the top right there is just an example of what that would look like along Okeechobee if you were going to run a system down the middle of it. And then what we're trying to get out of the Treasure Coast work order and really into our scenario planning for our LRTP is going to be more into that capacity of the population and employment around these nodes, and what's the impacts on the transportation system for those. And then also any other sort of measures or stories that could come out of that for what locals would need, local decision makers would need for land development to start moving towards that scenario. So if that has to do with market value and increased tax revenue, if it's any other method or measures out there that they're interested in, trying to incorporate that into our scenario planning as well. And I believe this is my last slide for you. So just additional emphasis for 2050, we want to have more of that housing coordination in this plan. I think a little bit that's going to be geared towards our performance measures and also scenario planning. We haven't really dived into how else that will look like, whether that is something that we look at when it comes to how we program projects. Also, greater emphasis on equity and Justice 40. And then some other newer things for the plan. We haven't done one of these in the past, but we're looking to do a statistically significant survey. So a random sample survey of citizens within Palm Beach County when it comes to transportation. Broward County has done, and Broward MPO has done this one in the past, and we're sort of copying that sort of format when it comes to our survey, and we'll be going forward with that one. And then also trying to focus more on implementation. So trying to make this a document that's easily consumable for the public. And when there's a product in there that is a desire of yours and it's not on the cost feasible list, having this easy steps to make it a reality. So make it a more comprehensive and comprehensible document for the public. Here's just the general schedule, goals, objectives. We're kicking off now and looking to get those done by spring of 2023, going into the needs and product evaluation later on this year, and then finishing up that scenario planning early next year. And then we are set for, I guess the final adoption would be December 2024, but we're shooting for around October. If you have any questions, we have Nathan George, again, our lead planner for the LRTP.
Thank you. Opening up for any questions.
Mr. Chair, yes, I do have a question. Andrew, great presentation. I am curious about your housing special, you mentioned a special interest in housing, and I'm curious about what research or what does that look like for you in the LRTP?
Mm-hmm. We haven't really gotten too much into it yet on that. I don't know, Nathan, if you have anything you want to mention or not, but go for it.
All right, so there was a lot of interest when we brought this to our committees last month, and the way I tried to describe it is that, there's kind of a push-pull relationship between transportation and housing, and we don't have that explicit call in what they introduced in the bipartisan infrastructure law to say we're going to make these investments and then we can make the land use policy changes that underlie it. So it's more like a carrot, an opportunity for us to make investments that will be supportive of transportation to attract housing. That's how I've been phrasing it. We don't know exactly how that's going to look as we get into the plan, but I'm thinking of it as an incentive to entice development in a more in a way that's more conducive to travel. So we're using these transportation investments to attract the appropriate type of housing to the appropriate locations. And we'll see if that's where we end up in about, 18
So it sounds like
months.
it might be more of like a policy suggestions.
I would just say it's the idea is that hopefully it will help shape the recommendations in our funding. So we're proposing projects that are supportive of the type of development we want to see that will help
Oh,
improve our performance measures. So, hopefully we're using those decisions as a way to balance performance specifically in like congestion management, safety, some of those areas where we can use funding and make some meaningful improvements.
okay, understood. Thank you.
That's what I'm envisioning at least.
Mhm.
Thanks.
And just to follow up on that, here in Palm Beach County, it's probably the same for your counties. Housing has been the number one issue. Housing affordability and the supply of it has been number one issue we've had for a lot of the stakeholder meetings we have with our partners throughout the county. And I know the county is also working towards their housing affordability and coordination, right? So figuring out where they can increase that supply. So we work closely with them. I think they have a sort of more plans rolling out for that. And then we also have a new bond that was passed for housing, for affordable housing. So a lot of things are happening. And I think the coordination is going to come in, definitely going to make its way throughout the document, but it'd be, as Nathan said, how we're going to sort of combine that and influence how we spend our money is still to be seen, but I think we'll get it done with this document.
Okay, thanks. Oh, and count me in for the tour afterwards.
Okay.
Francesca, is there anybody wanting to speak on the Zoom world? Because I can't see,
I don't
just to
see any
know.
hands.
Nobody's raising their hands? Okay, any questions here? I do have one. I think Jessica had mentioned about the interrelationship of the scenario planning at the regional and at the countywide level and some coordination and perhaps maybe just wanted to get a sense for Francesca and the team and for myself, quite frankly, to understand the dynamic between the two and perhaps the expectations on behalf of the TPA as to the regional RTP effort. And in terms of the scenario planning to feed, because I see that spring of 2024 is when you'll be in the midst of the scenario planning.
Yes, yeah. Later this year or early next year. It's a good question. I'd have to look at the timeline to see and compare that about when things come out. Our approach to it was really a lot of the work we're doing for the scenario planning with our consultants is related to just development itself. There will probably be other portions of that come out of the regional scenario planning that we may want to start. I don't know how we're going to integrate it into what we do, but for example, when it comes to telecommuting, right? I mean, there's a scenario there where, and that's something that our committees and board care about as well, is a scenario on telecommuting. And so we definitely want those results. Whether they're going to be in the exact same scenario as our land development scenarios, they'll probably be separate. Maybe we do a mashup of a lot of things in a later scenario. But we haven't really looked at the direct dates yet, I think, for when those both come in and when that would come about. But I don't think our delay of development scenarios would impact.
No, I'm looking at the other way around. What expectation you have from the RTP to potentially
your
feed
plan.
your side so that we are meeting your expectations. That's really the intent of. the
Right, that's true.
question.
Yes, when we go to our committees and board and we show our scenarios from the modeling, they're going to want to see around the same time the scenarios of the RTP.
I think Jessica had a question.
Additional background on what I shared before. So Chris Sinclair from Renaissance with Kittleson will be coming with a proposed work plan after thoroughly reviewing each of the LRTP scopes and schedule to have a group discussion. Because I think right now, although communication has occurred, it hasn't been in detail and we're all kind of diving into the LRTP pool. So I think having a detailed, well thought out with schedule discussion soon, next month, will be beneficial and will answer your question on both parties' side. I think we just haven't had the chance to have that.
Great, thank you.
In-depth discussion.
Thank you. Any other questions for Andrew or Nathan? With that said, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Nathan. Let's move on to item number 8, committee reports, and let's begin with the public participation subcommittee. And I think we have, oh, Jessica.
Thank you. Look for the red. I had the honor of sitting at the public participation subcommittee this morning, led by Elizabeth Rockwell. I just, on the group's behalf, wanted to report they met. We kicked off the regional transportation plan item. That was the focus of the meeting, which is why I'm reporting back. And as I mentioned before, we are kicking off all the things, the website, the social media, the surveying, and integrating into the long range plans. The wheels are in motion. You'll be hearing back from us, and we will be meeting on about a monthly basis to keep the RTP moving and connected to your long range transportation plans.
All right, thank you. And just for the record, Elizabeth Rockwell is in the present. Okay, there we got you on camera, Elizabeth. Moving on to the modeling subcommittee, and we have Mr. Tawari Emerson to give an update on the efforts.
Hi, thank you, Chair. So quick update on the modeling subcommittee. As we've all alluded to earlier, we're getting into scenario planning, which the model is going to be very important for. But we've completed with the transition to our activity sim open source transition. We're actually testing the model right now. And the only thing that we're finishing up right now, waiting on, is the 2050 SE data, which we all been coordinating, the various counties have been coordinating on that. And we're going to be presenting that item or draft numbers to the Rttac next month. So once we have finalized our SE data, the 2020 and the 2050, our model will be ready for delivery to the LRTP teams at the end of June. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawari. And next up is the Transportation System Management and Operations Subcommittee, or TSMNO. I don't believe we have an update as per the chair, Alexandra Lopez. But we do have to report that the next meeting is going to be held on April 27th at the Broward MPO, correct? Correct. Okay. Member comments, item number 9. I do have some administrative items here. And the first one is that I believe that the Rttac meeting that had been scheduled for April has been canceled.
Correct. At the request of the chair, Rttac for April has been canceled.
Okay, which means that the next scheduled meeting of Rttac would be in July.
Correct.
All right. I just wanted to make sure and to talk to Paul Calvaresi to make sure that the intent was to cancel that meeting and not have another meeting until the summer, or was there the intent to reschedule that meeting at some other time during the spring?
Thank you for the clarification, Chair. So the intent was to cancel the meeting, not to reschedule the meeting. But if you want, and I'm just putting this out there, I know Broward MPO is next in line to host Rttac, and we don't want to shirk our responsibility.
Okay,
Sure. Thank you for that, Paul, and we'll be in touch. The next meeting is scheduled for July 21st. So we'll just coordinate on finalizing the location.
Okay. All right. Then onto the next business is the next Rttac meeting. I think we're supposed to be meeting on April 12th at the Broward MPO, but that meeting, I think we're going to switch it to be an Rttac workshop. And what I wanted to kind of then is to have an in-person meeting on May 10th. And didn't want to take Broward County out of the rotation. So then at the May 10th meeting would be at the Broward MPO. And I just want to make sure that that calendar is okay with the Broward MPO.
Yes, not to throw a wrench, I think Rttac, the next Rttac I actually have is after. I'm sorry, yes, you're correct. If we were to have it in May, we could have it at Broward since we are here this month. But not to throw a wrench in what has been said, there has been conversation this morning or this afternoon about the network. And so I don't know if it's the interest of the members to have a meeting so that we can fully flesh out questions about the network,
Well,
or would
I-
we instead have that?
Yeah, I would think that in the workshop that we can start the discussion going in the workshop and perhaps at this point, yes, come back up, Jessica. This workshop, I know one of the things that you wanted to begin the discussion was as to the scenario planning.
Yes.
So is there room that we could accommodate
Yes.
more presentations? We have mentioned about Shireen and somebody from District 4 coming in to give us a presentation on the SIS as
Yes.
part of the regional network.
Yes, if we want to still have it as more of a workshop, we can fit both topics. I just wanted to make sure, because between my thoughts, the last 24 hours till after our discussion, I did want to make sure the network did get discussed in April, where I wasn't really there this morning.
Okay,
So if we could do scenario and network in April,
right.
I don't, whether you call it a committee meeting or a working group session.
It's a
I'm
workshop.
indifferent. Perfect.
So, and it'll be totally virtual.
And I can get technical information compiled in advance of that meeting. So when we get into the workshop, you'll have reading material, entering that if that's helpful to make
So-
it more productive.
So Jessica, I
Yeah.
would like
Yes.
to have then the workshop, we begin the discussion
Mhm.
and perhaps have something in hand
Yes.
for the regional network to begin that discussion. But I would like an action item come May
Yes.
10th
Yes.
as to the regional network. And then that meeting, I will want to emphasize being in person for that action.
Mhm.
And I also encourage it because that will be my last meeting of the RTAC.
Yes.
So it's worthy to be in person.
The May meeting. is
The May
ours.
10th meeting.
May 10th is your last RTAC of how many
It's
years?
my last RTAC
How many years?
since
your
its
last
foundation.
RTAC? Hundreds of RTAC meetings, your
Since-
last one.
yes,
Yeah.
Since 2006.
Okay, okay.
So
We can certainly
anyway,
do that. Challenge
Hmm?
accepted to get an adopted network.
let's do this.
We are accepting the challenge, not just me.
All right, great.
So awesome. Yes, I'll work with Francesca to make sure all the materials are prepared for that. And then we can work with FDOT to make sure we're ready
All
for that
right.
as well in April.
So if I can, I was looking at the calendar invites and it looks like Broward MPO is scheduled to host April based on the calendar invites.
Correct.
Correct.
That's why I wanted to make sure that
Update.
I wanted to keep you in the rotation, Paul. But so I need you to check whether May 10th, you'll be able to host it for the next rotation.
Yeah, we should be fine. So
Okay.
that's fine.
And the 12th is virtual, so.
May 10th. May tenth would be the next Rttac meeting, but we'll have an Rttac workshop on the twelfth, where we were supposed to have the meeting in Broward.
And
And
we'll
that'll
send
be
out.
all
Okay, so-
virtual.
And just for clarification, then we're just, because that was gonna be a TPA hosted one. So the May 10th.
Yes, the May 10th would have been TPA, I
We're just
believe,
gonna-
and,
So I
um,
guess for future practice, if we, and like in this case, we'll just cancel that one. We're not gonna move all the other ones, right? We'll just,
Just to
Sorry,
keep
just
the
kept-
rotation
okay.
going, if possible. Because if it wasn't, if I would have gotten, hey, Wilson, May tenth, we can't do it, then I would have
Yeah.
go back to what our originally scheduled programming would have been.
and I'll send out the online information for the virtual meeting in April. Shortly.
Address for May 12th.
Yes, and update the calendar invite for the May 12th.
Right. And we'll be very close by May tenth on the data and the model, right? We're still, what's the date, Tawari? The delivery date?
June 30th.
June
June
30th.
30th.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Every meeting we're gonna have,
Every meeting.
every meeting, June 30th. All right.
And I'm sorry, Chair, after the May 10th meeting, should we schedule an offsite debrief?
I think that's a good idea.
You're the host.
Following, yes.
It's your prerogative. All right, and by the way, Paul, I would like in the same context that we requested from Andrew to kind of highlight what's going on here in Palm Beach County. I would extend the same courtesy for you to place on the agenda some update. Kind of, I want to have the meetings take on a little bit of a local flavor as to where we're located at, okay? Just let me know what you want to present or Francesca, and we'll put it on the agenda.
I will gladly commit Christopher to that.
Okay, great. Anything else, member comments?
I do have a quick comment, Mr. Chair. The Miami-Dade TPO has kicked off their 2050 long-range transportation plan, MAP 2050. As such, we're having our first public virtual outreach event on next Tuesday, March 14th. I'm sure you all are on our registration on our newsletter list. If not, I'm sure Elizabeth Rockwell will be happy to forward you our information and make sure that you're able to register for this virtual outreach event, where we will be starting to develop our goals and objectives for our 2050 long-range transportation plan. So if you live, work, or play in Miami-Dade County, feel free to join us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other member comments? Hearing none? Let me do the gavel, since you gave me the gavel here. Meeting adjourned.